for Advancement in Management and Leadership. My name is Lisa Cook, Senior Director of Walden University Career Services, and I will be moderating today's session. Many of our students and alumni strive to effect positive social change through management and leadership roles in the private, public, and nonprofit sectors. Today we are hosting a webinar about what steps you can take to enhance your qualifications and start living your future story in management and leadership. I know from personal experience that a manager is only effective as the team she collaborates with. So before we get started, I'd like to introduce you to our Career Services Center team. Our mission is based on preparing our learners to navigate career transition through educating, coaching, and advising them. So here's our Career Services Center team, our advising team from left to right: Dina Berggren, Nicole Skalski, who is going to be helping me with fielding questions and running through our webinar today, and then Denise Pranke and Andrea Obricki. So before we get started, we're interested in getting some feedback about who is joining us today. So Nicole is going to launch a poll slide for you. So basically, we're asking you to pick what Walden College you're in. So it's whether it's Riley College of Ed, the College of Health Sciences, College of Social and Behavioral Sciences, College of Management and Technology, or College of Undergraduate Studies. So if you can please choose the college, and if you're an alumnus, choose the college you graduated from.
And it looks like, Lisa, we have people actively putting in their responses.
Excellent.
And we'll give it just a few more seconds. And it looks like
who's our winner?
Our winner is School of Management and Information Systems Technology.
Okay.
And then we have runner-up, it looks like Health Sciences and College of Social and Behavioral Sciences. So I'll close the poll and I'll share it so everyone can see the results. And then we have coming in third, Richard Riley College of Education.
Excellent. Okay, so it looks like College of Management and Technology, not quite half, so 40%, followed by CSBS at 26%, and then Health Sciences at 22%. So that's great, because we were hoping to have a wide variety of students in different colleges representing our audience today, because really these topics cut across all academic programs and fields. So terrific. Welcome. We're glad to have you. So I'm going to briefly go through our objectives, and then I'm going to introduce our panelists today. So we have 3 objectives. We're going to discuss expanding your career identity through strategic initiatives, identifying opportunities to assume managerial and leadership roles, and then living your future story. So with us, we have 3 distinguished panelists today. I'm just so pleased to have them with us. Our first panelist is Dr. John Nurnberg. He is currently Program Director for the PhD in Management program with Walden. He's held many jobs in several careers. He's consulted with Fortune 500 organizations as well as several national governments. His most recent assignment was to prepare Japanese government scholarship holders from Afghanistan for the post-war challenges facing civil society in their homeland. His research interests include intentional organizations, organizational cultures, intercultural leadership, social change, community building, emergent forms of leadership, and non-traditional forms of thinking, living, and organizing. He has lived abroad for almost 10 years, written 4 books, and climbed Mount Kilimanjaro, which is simply amazing. So thank you, John. Glad to have you. And our next presenter is Dr. Henry Brashen. Dr. Brashen is Program Director in the MS in Leadership and MS in Human Resources programs here at Walden. He has been in the education field for more than 30 years. His research interests include leadership, intercultural communication, gender communication, conflict resolution, nonverbal communication, online teaching. He's founder of Clear and Effective Communications, a company that helps clients maximize productivity and morale by enhancing leadership performance and internal and external communication. He has worked with various organizations to provide expertise in areas of leadership, succession planning, strategic HR management, organizational development, executive coaching, research and design methodology, conflict and mediation, and facilitation and training. And his interests include being a ventriloquist, another really unique fact, which I'm really impressed with, in addition to being a runner and a long-distance swimmer. So welcome, Henry. And so our third panelist is a Walden student, Teri Rhodes, with whom I worked several years ago, and I've watched her progress up her career ladder over the last several years, and we're really pleased to welcome Teri. She is currently in the PhD in Learning Management program. She's finishing up. Her dissertation is expected to be completed within the next 6 months, so we're very happy for her. She earned an MBA in Nonprofit, Public, and Organizational Management from Walden, and her career path has been to transition from being an assistant in a bank to HR director for her local YMCA. And she's also serving as an adjunct professor teaching online. So welcome, Teri. Glad to have you. So now I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Brashen to discuss the differences between leadership and management.
Thank you so much, and welcome everybody. It's great that you're here. I just wanted to say a few words about leadership and management, and I also wanted to preface this by saying the things that we're going to tell you today, you're going to be able to do. I know I had a really rough start, which I'll talk about later, and I feel like if I could do it, you could do it. So there's a lot of good content here. Oftentimes, leadership and management are used interchangeably, but they're really two separate concepts. What they do have in common is they both focus on influencing people and getting them to work effectively together so that they can meet the organizational goals. But when we think of management specifically, these are the folks that are doing the day-to-day. They get their direction from leadership. They get the work done through others, through their planning, organizing, supervising. Leadership is more focused on getting the work done by sharing direction, motivating folks, and aligning them with the organizational goals, the mission, vision, and values. So whether you're what I call a legitimate, and that means appointed manager or leader, or whether you are, in the words of Max Dupree, a roving leader, and that means you have these skills or you're aspiring to these skills, but you may not be in that role yet. But what you do can get you there, and that's really a piece of what we're doing today. Thank you.
So now I'm going to pose several questions to our panelists. And so the first one is, would you please share with us ways to expand one's career identity through strategic initiatives? And Dr. Brashen is going to be our first presenter to address that question.
Oh boy, this is really fun for me. I want to share with you when I started out. I had my first term in college. I had a 1.59 GPA. My advisor told me I was wasting time, I wasn't bright, and I'd never make it. And I always remembered those words, and I thought, well, this person's an advisor, so she must know. And I really struggled. And what happened? I was on probation. And in my second term, there was a faculty member who believed in me and obviously thought I was smarter than I thought I was. And through her encouragement, I was able to turn things around. So if you remember nothing else of what I say to you today, please remember two things. Believe in yourself, number one, and number two, surround yourself with accepting, positive people. Those are the ones that are going to bring the best out of you. So now, briefly, in terms of a strategic, and when I started out, I didn't even know what strategic meant. But some tips, if you think about what is it you really want to do, what is your passion? Because when you chase your passion, that's going to create many opportunities for you. So when we think about mission, this is just really what is it you do? And vision is a dreamlike state of what will it look like as you aspire to that. And then the goals are the specific ways of getting there. So now, just to give you an example, what did I want to do way back when? Well, I changed my major 7 times, but beside that, I wanted to be a consultant, and I wanted to work also in academia. So I thought, okay, my goal is I want to be a consultant, and how will I do it? I thought, well, I need to be able to develop some trainings and some coaching modules, and so those are the specifics. I need to learn how to market, and then setting the goals. Okay, what are the competencies you need, and how are you going to get those. And just making that plan, and we'll talk about that a little bit more specifically later on. And my colleagues, Dr. Nurnberg, and soon to be Dr. Rhodes, will expound on that as well. And the second piece of what I want to share with you is to really recognize the value of your education. Congratulations. This is really the first step in getting you where you want to go. And I remember when I got my master's, there were people calling me sir, and I was looking around thinking, they must be talking to my dad. Nobody ever called me sir. But the degree garnered a certain amount of respect, and the PhD even more. It was great. But I still needed to develop the skills. So a degree is important, but, and the proverbial but, is what leaders and employers are looking for is skills. So that's why it's important to embrace the content that you're learning. It doesn't matter what your grade point is. And I tell you this from experience because I spent a lot of time with organizations across the country helping them in the hiring process, from executives all the way down to frontline employees. And no one, not one time, ever asked, well, what's this person's GPA? But they asked two other questions. Do they come from a good university, and what do they bring to the table? So it's all about applying the skills you learn. That's the most important thing. So for example, as program director in leadership and HR, leadership skills are important. So I suggest if you're looking for leadership, to look at the 4 areas that I see of leadership: inspiring people, directing people, making decisions, and acting on those decisions. What competencies are needed? You begin to identify those, that's going to move you in the right direction. And then it's important to recognize that employers are looking for employees who bring the right attitude and skills to the workplace. This is very important. What do I mean by the right attitude? Good communication, positive person, a collaborator, team player, somebody that listens, because it's easy. Jim Collins says, get the right people on the bus, and then you train them. It's a whole lot easier for people to train you for a specific job. But if you have the skills, the communication, the leadership, the management skills, you're going to open up so many different opportunities. And we're going to talk more about that in a bit. So back to you, Lisa.
Terrific. Thank you, Dr. Brashen. So Dr. Nurnberg, we'd like to hear your thoughts on this. John, are you muted? Because we can't hear you.
I was saying such brilliant things, too. I was saying such brilliant things. Hello, everyone. The first thing I'd like to remind everybody in the room today is that every organization, no matter where it is managed, and some of them are led. And if you are running a little lemonade stand in a valley in New Guinea, or you're running a Walmart in New York City, that organization is going to be managed, and if the employees and all the members of those organizations are lucky, it will be a dynamic organization with a great leader. So that's the first thing. And sometimes, you study education, so you think you'll be a teacher and you'll work in a school, but you will be in a managed environment. And if you're lucky, your principal will be a dynamic leader that inspires you. And the same thing is true with every profession, from healthcare to psychological counseling and whatever service you're studying. And why that is important is because you're going to decide at some point whether or not your professional training is what most excites you, which drives you to want to be the best you possibly can in your profession as a practitioner, or whether or not you're going to want to rise into the management structure for your own purposes, such as wanting to improve programs, create new programs, reach greater numbers of clients and beneficiaries. Whatever the reason is, there's a choice you're going to make at some point in your career. Stay where you're at in terms of being that practitioner and becoming the best you can be, or step into management. and begin a process of learning how the organization can best organize itself to fulfill its mission, and do so, of course, in a way that excites those who work in that organization. So there's a choice you will probably make once you get into your profession. But also understand that every profession also creates people to take their place in the hierarchy of that profession. So in school systems, they will need a professional teacher to rise to a department chair. In healthcare, it will be a supervisory nurse, perhaps, or a counseling director. And in those situations, again, you'll have to make a decision. Should I prepare for those roles, or should I stay and become the best practitioner I possibly can? So the decision is yours. And once you make that decision, and let's assume for the sake of this particular webinar, you choose to enter management and leadership. Now, as Henry had said, thinking strategically is really critical. And what that means is taking the initiative to begin to think as the leaders of your organization think. What is it in the environment your organization is in that are challenges, that are the barriers that it faces? What is it that your organization must deal with in terms of its budget, in terms of its clients, in terms of its customers, whatever the relationship is with the environment? What is it that drives the senior leadership? What is it that they're concerned about? So you begin to create an organizational identity as well as a personal identity in your profession. So as you think strategically, your education has prepared you to perform well in your profession, but it hasn't likely taught you much about leadership. And in that case, you need to practice those skills, and it is a set of skills, to become effective in working with other people in an official capacity, in some hierarchical role. And to do that, you might start out by volunteering, whether inside the organization or in civic groups, to begin to learn those skills, practice them, have them available to you when you do rise through the organization. So, thinking strategically is asking yourself, how can I further the goals of the organization? And secondly, how can I develop the skills that will enable me to influence others in a positive fashion such that we can get the job done and all of us feel satisfied in the process?
Excellent, John. There's a book called The Art of Possibility that's written by an orchestra conductor named Benjamin Zander, and he talks about the fact that people can lead from any chair in the orchestra. It's not just the conductor, that you, even if you're in the back row, you can lead from any chair, and I think that's exactly the point you're trying to drive home. So thank you. Terrific. So on to our next question. So how can students and alumni position themselves for managerial and leadership roles? So Dr. Brasham, will you lead us off with that question?
I'd love to. Thank you. Some tips for you as you look at positioning yourself. And it's like my colleague, Dr. John Nurnberg, said, the more that you can volunteer, the more things you can do, the better. But I'm going to start with number one, revive your imagination and dare to dream. And this is important. Do you remember when you were a little kid, what a great imagination you had? And I know for myself, I lived 3 blocks from my grade school, but it took me 2.5 hours to walk home because we were playing games and making up new things along the way. And it was great. And I would ask questions in classes, and I often was told to be quiet. And so the imagination kind of went down from there. And this is something that sometimes is drummed out of us, but I'm here to tell you that if you can imagine and you can dream, and you think about, what do I really want to do? You can make it happen, because there's research out there that we become like the pictures we create in our mind. I think about my wife, Nancy. She's the only one I know that has done this. She has been in music all her life. She sings, she plays piano, she plays cello, and she wanted to pursue her music, but she was in a job that wouldn't allow her to do that. She didn't make any money. So she thought, well, I'm smart in science and math. You know what? I'm going to go to medical school. And she did. And that was her way. That was the dream she had to support her music. She's the only one I ever knew that went to medical school to support her music. But true story. So think about what is it that you really want to do. What's your passion? And then develop a plan. Plans are important. How are you going to get there? Attending relevant workshops and classes is a good way. So if you have if you want to develop particular skills in management and leadership, what are some classes you can take? What are some skills you can learn and apply? And then showcase those on the job. And people will see that. They really will. Find a mentor and a coach. And there's a difference between mentoring and coaching. Typically, a mentor in an organization is somebody who has been in the organization and can guide you about how the organization works, what you might be doing, the politics of the organization, whereas a coach focuses more on what are the competencies you need to develop and how will you get there. And then I talk about getting a sponsor. I never thought of this before, but once I did my first job, and I had somebody that believed in me, she put my name out there, and that got me more opportunities than I otherwise would have had. So being able to do that, finding somebody who will do that for you. Using Google Alert, which is a free service. So you are looking at a competency you want to develop. Google Alert is a tool that every time something comes up on Google, it will send it to you, and you can hone your skills in that particular area. Joining associations. This is a good way of networking. For example, in the leadership program, International Leadership Association is a very good one. In the HR program, of course, SHRM is a very good one. But you meet people, there are tools, there are resources, there's ways to develop your skills. And if you have a mentor or a coach or even other people you work with, seek feedback. Because if you're performing and you seek feedback, one of the only ways we can improve is if we get that feedback. Be positive. There are times that you think, oh man, this day really sucked. But the next day is a new day. And it's important to keep that positive attitude because people will feed off that. And finally, never give up. Resilience is going to get you there. If you stick with it, it's going to happen. So, back to you, Lisa.
Thank you. Dr. Nuremberg, would you like to expound on that?
Of course I would. Thank you. Yes, I would first like to say that leadership is the development of influence through positive relationships. So as you're developing your dream and as you're keeping your eye on your career, just remember not only do other people help you along the way, but you're going to be helping others. And in that sense, if you have clear goals, and rather than think only of yourself, but work collaboratively in achieving them, you're on your way to being a leader and getting noticed and having opportunities thrust at you. And I have to say, though, that one of the killers for lots of people starting out in careers, and even those in the middle, they get trapped in this we-them mindset. It's like the employees this and the management that, or labor this and management that, or the front line this and management that. And I'll tell you, when you do start to rise in an organization, you realize that the organization is a whole, and it pursues its goals out there in the world, whether it's in the competitive marketplace or whether it's providing a service or it's a nonprofit organization with people depending on them. Whatever it is, the entity is a whole. And as you can think of the entity and your role in it as part of promoting a whole, then I believe it's going to open up new ways of thinking about your own role and your career. So if the opportunities will arise for you to volunteer, to take initiative, to do what no one else wants to do, this is all in an effort to promote the greater good, the purpose of the organization. And as you step up when others don't, you become noticed. You become able to speak to those in other areas of the organization. You can connect with others, quote, above you, and get a different viewpoint which is going to help you understand what you need to accomplish and how you can spend your time to promote your career. So you think through the challenges, provide suggestions, do all kinds of things that promote the good of the entire organization. And in doing so, you'll develop the vision that not only is reinforcing and positive for you, but it also will align with the organizations and promote your advancement. Where internal opportunities don't exist, starting a social club perhaps within the company, or organizing fellow employees to engage in a civic purpose will give you the opportunity to practice those leadership skills again, and also to promote the organization in a different way. And it gets you involved both in the internal as well as the external community building. And that's really a great way to both learn the skills and to become more visible.
Excellent, thank you. And so now I'm going to ask Nicole if we have any questions so far from our audience.
And we do, so we'll take some time to break up the webinar to address a few questions. And Dr. Brashen, we actually have a question for you from a student. She says, when Dr. Brashen mentioned how people question what type of university the applicant attended, quote unquote, does it really matter since we are attending an online university?
Great question. Absolutely not. Online is the way that many universities are going now anyway, or at least hybrid. And as long as you get the skills, and our programs in College of Management and Technology and throughout the university do teach to the program outcomes. So it's not going, it's going to be a positive. So there isn't, when online first came into fruition, there was a different way of looking at it because it's new. But now that it's been around and the quality of the people graduating have been seen, doors are open. So it's good.
Excellent, thank you. We have another question, so I'll direct this one to Dr. Nuremberg. How did you first discover that you were a leader? And did you evolve into a leadership position naturally, or did you consciously make the effort to obtain a leadership position?
Oh, that's an interesting question. I'm not sure I consider myself a leader in the glorified way that we talk about it, as being this visionary that has adoring followers. But what I do like is taking responsibility, and I do like working toward a common good. And as I mentioned earlier about having that vision of the organization as a whole, there's nothing more I enjoy than to inspire others to work toward a worthwhile goal. And here at Walden, where our goal is to connect our research with positive social change, I think it's just a natural. Anybody who's in a position here can be a fabulous leader simply because our mission is so incredible. But me personally, I had a very gregarious nature, and as a kid, I became the captain of my safety patrol in elementary school. And I had 16 direct reports, and that was my first managerial and leadership position of any consequence, and here I was at 11 years old. And I have to tell you, that was a defining moment in my life, mostly because I was fired from that job.
Oh no, how did that happen? How did that happen? I need to hear that.
Well,
how did that happen?
It's really a longer story than you need to hear right now, but I'll tell you this. One of my responsibilities was to enforce our laws and rules of decorum and safety and all of these. And on one particular spring day, I didn't have lunch, and in those days they were very innocent times. And instead of having lunch, I had a piece of gum. And I was fine with that outside the school building. But as I crossed the threshold into the school, Mrs. Cole caught me. And she made an example out of me. And now today, maybe I'd have to carry a weapon or be smoking some dope or something. But In those days, just having a piece of chewing gum was a capital crime in my school. So I was unceremoniously fired on the spot. And it was the best thing that ever happened to me. And I'll tell you, after I got over the trauma and realized that a leader has responsibilities, it's not a privilege. And those responsibilities have to be demonstrated to an extent unexpected of any follower. And that person has to live up to a much higher standard. And that has been an incident that obviously has informed my entire life and a lot of how I perceive others in the leadership role. And so I would just say that from that moment on, I became extremely curious about leadership, about management, and it became a lifelong study.
That is an excellent story. That's such a great example. Thank you very much for sharing that. So that's terrific. Okay, I think we're going to move on. We have one more question to pose to our presenters, and then we'll open it again up to questions. So, Dr. Brashen, what advice would you provide about living one's future story, and can you share an experience of your own?
Yes, thank you. So let me just give you a few suggestions quickly. Probably the most significant thing, the most important thing is to really listen. When I talk about that, that means hearing what somebody has to say, making sure you understand it, letting the other person know that you heard what they had to say, you cared that they spoke, and then and only then responding. I always remember when I first started out, there were in trying to do these things that we're suggesting that you do. And I went to a conference, and at that conference, I knew no one. And I walked up to this group, and this one guy that was talking the most, and there were a number of people around him. And I reached out and I introduced myself, and nobody even looked up. I thought, well, this didn't go very well. So I wasn't sure what to do, but I waited. I just stood there, and then I asked this guy a couple of questions. And after I'd asked him the second question, he suddenly turned to me and was paying attention to me. Meanwhile, all these other people were around us, and pretty soon it was like he was following me. And all I was doing was listening, asking questions. And when I talk about the third bullet here, be positive, encouraging, patient, and genuine, the first two, positive and encouraging, are pretty easy. Patience is sometimes hard, have to work on that. But what made it work to be genuine? Because quite frankly, sometimes someone will be saying something and you're pretending to listen, you're thinking of a million other things. But for me, I remember that this guy was pontificating so much, and I was so amazed at what passion he had behind what he was saying that I was genuinely interested. And so that enabled me to genuinely respond to him. And then, then the other piece is to collaborate, work with people, and as I had said before, never give up. I wanted to just share one last experience ever so briefly, because when I started, and I went through those steps that we talked about earlier on my part, on my outline, I actually did those things. And I wanted to be a consultant, and I wanted to start with school districts, because I came out of academia. So I approached one of the largest school districts, Lake Washington School District in Greater Seattle, and I fortunately got a meeting with the head of it. And I came in and I talked to her about what her needs were for her teachers, and I thought we were having a really good meeting. And I told her what I would do and how I would do it. And then she said, Henry, really appreciate you coming in. I like what you have to say, but you have no experience. And I was thinking, now what do I do? So I reiterated what I would bring to the table, and then I paused and I asked her, I said, I bet you have a lot of people that you supervise, and I bet you have a lot of people with a lot of experience. And she said, well, yes, I do. And I said, are they all really good at what they do? And she paused, and she started laughing. And she said, well, no. And so sometimes experience is overrated. There are people out there that have experience, but they're not necessarily good at what they do. But if you are good at what you do, it really doesn't matter. If you play to the competencies that are needed, and if you've got those, that will make the difference. So I love this quote by Vince Lombardi, and I'm reminded that maybe not everybody knows who he was. He was a coach of the legendary coach of the Green Bay Packers, led them to victory in Super Bowl I and II. And he said the greatest accomplishment is not in never falling, but in rising again after you fall. And I wish I had $1 for every rejection I had. I'd be a rich man today. But it's not about that. It's about getting up and continuing. And if you do that, I truly believe, I really do believe this, that the best is yet to come. Thank you.
Thank you. So Dr. Nuremberg, would you please share your thoughts with us?
Yes, I think, there's been a theme. One of the themes today has been that to follow your passion, to look at your dreams, and don't get thrown off course by what others expect or want. That you need to really focus on what's best for you. And there's this book by Hillman. It's called The Soul's Code, and it's about how the germ of what you will later flourish, that will later flourish as your career, is in you from a very young age. And it's your job to identify what that is. What is it that you're really meant to do? We often talk about wanting to do because of external appeals of one kind or another. Oh, we like that person who's singing in a rock band, and gee, I'd like to do that. Or, there's a CEO over there with all that power and making millions of dollars. Oh, I'd like to do that. But those are fairly irrelevant because those external goals are not your own. It may be that you will end up as a terrific rock star or a CEO, but what Hillman is saying is that if you should really look for that within yourself and to nurture what is already there. Management and leadership are great careers to take. They're not the only ones, of course, but they are for particular kinds of people. And those that succeed best are those where leadership roles complement their personalities. And if they can be a servant of the organization's vision and mission, it becomes that much easier, that much more natural. So what does the world look like from the vantage point of the role you want to play? When we say live the life you want, it's sort of putting the mindset in you now that you really do know, that you really understand, that you're seeing the organization for what it can become, and you're seeing yourself for what you can become, and act upon both of those insights. And so what do you need to do to prepare for that? Is it about studies? Is it about experience? Is it about just letting it unfold? That's a decision you need to make, but reflecting on those choices is really critical. How did job holders achieve their success? Like myself, I don't know. I have been pretty self-driven by questions. I think ever since that day when I was 11, I had these questions. What is politics and power and responsibility? And how can we utilize them for everyone's benefit and promote the organization at the same time, yet without having to sacrifice ourselves in the process of creating great things? And so that has driven me mostly into an intellectual life of, academic world. And I've enjoyed the privilege of being an academic. But one of the things I enjoy most is, and that I've discovered is a great part of me, is really in motivating others and helping others see who they are, and to give them an opportunity to express that, whether it's in the classroom or in a professional context. So my success, such as it is just a place that helps me realize who I am, and I'm fortunate enough to help others in the process. So don't wait to be asked. Don't try to pursue someone else's life. Pursue your own. Don't push. Don't fight others out of the way. It's unnecessary, because there's only one of you on this planet, and when you know who that is, you'll be respected for it.
Terrific. Thank you. So Teri, as I mentioned at the beginning of the webinar, I know that you really made a huge leap from being an admin assistant to being a director at a YMCA. So can you tell us how you transitioned between those roles?
I started out. It's kind of funny. You grow in yourself, and you learn to listen to that soul voice or that soul, whatever it may be in your life. And I think that's where I started, at an admin assistant. I began to listen to that soul voice, and that voice kept driving me to become more educated, get an education. And so I started with the education piece and attending Walden University. The second piece for me was looking around the organization and finding that person that I wanted to emulate and wanted to be like, my goal. And I would watch this person, and I would see the things that they would do, how they would manage people, for good and for bad. You always can, as an observer, look around and say, maybe I should have done it that way, and maybe she should have done it that way. So I observed. I kept to myself for a little while, and then as I began to grow in my education and I grew in my position, I looked for ways to use the things that I was learning in Walden daily at my job. Anything that I could apply in my workplace from what I had learned, I was out there talking about it. And I, just like Dr. Nurnberg said, I volunteered for positions. I created an onboarding position for our unit. I mean, I just used the tools that I was learning. And people would say, oh, that Teri, she's like a sponge at college. I mean, she's just taking it all in and sponging it all out to us. And so as I did that, people began to recognize me, and I began to just grow in myself and in my position. And I went from a little tiny admin to an admin over a whole unit. And so then that's how I grew. And then at the time, the lovely lady that I emulated, she was getting ready to leave the bank. And I told her, I've been watching you. And she was overwhelmed. She just couldn't believe it. And I said, I've learned from you, and I'm so thankful I've been a part of your life. And today we are friends. And when I'm in really deep doo-doo and don't know what to do, I reach out to her and I talk with her about things that are bothering me, or directions that I don't know what to go, how to do. But just real quickly, as I want to tell you, this soul voice thing just really resonates with me, because my soul voice has said to me all along, you are to write something. There is something I am to write. And I knew that I had to get through all the steps, BA, PhD, through all those steps to get to this point. And I'm almost there. And I've got a little spot ready and a little journal going about what I'm going to write, my career foundational book on. And that's been my soul voice. And I know that there are others of you that are out there struggling to find your soul voice, but allow it to don't let anything block it. Let it flow. Let it go. Be persistent. Stay informed. I've done all these things, and you can too. Just what these learned gentlemen have said to us. We can do it. You can do it. I've done it. I was told too I wasn't very smart. But guess what? We overcame. Dr. Bashir and I overcame. And so you can too. And I'm an encourager. That's my gift. Dr. Nurnberg, he's an encourager. So those things you can do, and just hang in there, and it will happen.
Excellent. Thank you, Teri. I look forward to the day I'm going to be quoting your best-selling career development book. So thank you. Great.
Well, thank you.
So now I'm going to open up the floor to questions. I know Nicole has a bunch of questions in the queue, so I'm going to pass the ball to her.
Okay, excellent. So we have a question coming in from a student. What should be the steps for a career change from engineering to management and leadership? And Dr. Brashen, I'm going to hand that question off to you.
Great question. The things that you can do, probably the tips that we've talked about today, but what I would do in your position, because you're looking at making a career change, is to let key people know that that's what you want to do. And when you do that, whether you're having a mentor, a coach like Lisa or like Teresa mentioned to us, whether you have a sponsor, but it's important to let people know what your aspirations are, and then figuring out, okay, how am I going to get there? I have seen in many years of consulting, people radically change what they were in. I mean, I've seen IT people go to HR, I've seen engineering people go to leadership, so it's all possible, it's all doable. You are not locked into it, because if you have skills that are going to be an advantage to the organization, then you're the kind of person people are looking for, and it will happen. So stay persistent and go for it.
Thank you, Dr. Brashen. Okay, Dr. Nuremberg, do you have any suggestions on how to get others in the company to see us differently, to accept our knowledge as being valid, and to allow us to do the job they hired us to do in the first place?
Well, that's an interesting problem to have if they're not letting you do the job you've been hired to do. That sounds a bit strange, actually. But if you're looking to be seen as capable of doing new jobs that you haven't done but you might be good at, that's something else, and that's how you can promote your career, where you're doing your job, you're seen as doing it well. Possibly they don't see you as, let's say that, like if you're a student getting an MBA, for example, it's very often the case where an MBA student will go back to their regular job, but now they've got these new skills and they want to be seen as having these skills. Well, the best way of being seen that way is to be applying what you know for the organization in new ways, and to take part in conversations that demonstrate your new knowledge, and to have your boss see you as a problem solver and as someone who can actually help him or her in achieving her or his objectives. So the more you become able to apply yourself in problem solving, especially for those of your immediate boss or your boss's boss, the more likely you will be seen as possessing those new skills and that new knowledge, and given new opportunities to apply them. I hope that answers the question.
Oh, yes,
thank
but
you.
it helps. Also from, of course, like a career services perspective, that's what we would recommend. Thank you. I'm going to address this to both of you, but we'll go with Dr. Brashen first. Is there a certain type of leadership style you all prefer? And
that's a very interesting question. The thing about leadership styles, whether you're transactional, transformational, servant leader, whether you're a spiritual leader, my recommendation is there's not one size that fits all. Currently I'm working on spiritual leadership because I think that's an approach which allows you to use the best of all the styles out there. So for me, it's like two things. One is recognizing what the other people need from you and being true to yourself and being able to be flexible enough to adjust your style. For example, introverts, and I wanted to say this earlier, I'll make this very quick because I know we're running out of time. Introverts, just for example, by listening, can get other people to respond to them. They don't have to be outgoing. They don't have to be charismatic. They may be, but it's not necessary. So there's not one style that's the best. Learn the styles, apply what works for you, and pay attention to your followers and their needs.
excellent. Thank you. Dr. Nuremberg, do you have
Well,
particular
I
leadership?
think Yeah, I think there's only one style, and that is your style. And while there's often in the literature the hint of one being, quote, better than another, you can only be yourself. And while you can change, you can develop skills, you can become a better listener, for example, or you can be better at giving and receiving feedback. Those are all great. But it's still ultimately, leadership is an expression of who you are and I guess how you see yourself. And so what I would suggest is to develop a style appropriate to your situation that's comfortable. And if it's not comfortable being yourself in your situation, then perhaps you're misplaced. That maybe you would need to look for a different context in which to express yourself. But in my particular case, I have professional colleagues around me, and all of us are very similarly inclined to want to talk and express ourselves and communicate fully and not use power arbitrarily and all of that. And so it seems to suit me to be in this environment. But in other environments where there's a harder drive for bottom line results, ethics be damned, those environments are not suited to me. And I wouldn't want to develop a style appropriate to that environment. So number one, again, who are you? Figure that out. What makes you most comfortable? How can you enhance your strengths? And how can you develop some of the talents that would enable others to want to work with you, to be with you, and to help you with your, accomplishing your vision, and vice versa. How can you develop those skills that will make the kind of people you want to be around respond to you? And how can you feel good about helping them become their best as well? So I may be drifting off here a bit, but I would say rather than pursuing a particular style, I would again go back inside and ask you to find out who you are, emphasize your strengths, develop those fully, and when you relate to others in a natural way, expressing your strengths, and there's a good response to that, then you know you've arrived. You know what your leadership style is, and it's working.
Oh, thank you, Dr. Nurnberg. It was excellent. Teri, do you have anything to add to that? Is there a certain type of leadership style that you prefer?
I'm with Dr. Nurnberg. Boy, I have tried to be another type of leader, and I can tell you that it didn't work out. And I fell back on just being myself, being the encourager, and I received that positive feedback of helping out, and I knew that was my type. And I'm not very good at pushing the bottom line. I'm more encourager-driven and helping others become the best that they can be.
Excellent. Excellent. Thank you. Okay, so we're running out of time here. We're going to move on to our resources. I just want to I am getting a bunch of questions from the audience coming in. Is the PowerPoint going to be available? This is excellent. So really, congratulations to all of our presenters and speakers. Today, it's been excellent. A lot of good comments coming on. And yes, we will have a comprehensive resources list along with the archive and along with the PowerPoint on the Career Center website within a week after today's presentation. So no worries to write down these resources. We have some book recommendations from our speakers on leadership as well. They will all be archived on the Career Center website. And here's a screenshot of our website. So you'll see that our red button there where it says Archive Webinars, you'll be able to find all of the resources, the recording, the resources, and the PowerPoint within a week of today's presentation. And be sure to check us out and stay connected with Career Services. We have a LinkedIn group that we encourage all students and alums to join where we share career-related resources and tips. You can follow us on Twitter. We have an excellent student blog, it's a blog that we run where we highlight and showcase our student success stories. And of course, feel free to schedule an appointment, visit our website, or email us. We are available for all students and alums, and we would like to wrap up with one final thought here from Steve Jobs. Your time is limited, so don't waste it living someone else's life. Don't be trapped by dogma, which is living with the results of other people's thinking. Don't let the noise of others' opinions drown out your own inner voice. And most important, have the courage to follow your heart and intuition. So I think this really supports what all of our presenters have given us today through the presentation on leadership. And again, thank you everyone for participating, and a special thanks to Teri Rhodes, Dr. Brashen, and Dr. Nuremberg. And we hope you enjoyed today's